I don't know if any Persona's on Xbox.
We'd have to check. Hello and welcome. My name is Alex Gonzalez, and with me today is my good old friend, J.E.
Hey, that's me.
And please remember that we are not game devs. How are you doing today, Jay?
It's hot, dude. It's been really hot. I don't know about where you're at, but it's hot. I am sweaty right now and like sticky. It's gross.
I live in the desert, so it's already becoming hot as well. But those are not the temperatures we are talking about today. Today we are creating something new. Every week we are not game devs will create a new exciting video game idea that we have always wanted to play, but do not have any knowledge or know how to create the wonderful experience that are video games. And today is my turn to present We Are Not Game Devs 148th IP. And this one I'm going to come up with a concept and then we'll fill out a game around it. I want to play a game where you start out as almost like an ethereal kind of character, and you have to inhabit one of three things. And then once you do that, you end up fusing with anything in the world, but then you have to choose when you dissipate. You can fuse and divide. So when you fuse with something, then you have to divide if you want and just be that one thing. So you can choose, like, let's say you fuse into an animal, and then you can choose to fuse the animal into a tree, and then it's a tree animal where it's bark and it's living, but it's not. And then you can choose to go back out and just be the tree, or just be the animal again. And I want it to be a game where it's an adventure game where there's a series of puzzles, but also maybe action missions. So you have to fuse either with things that'll make you stronger for battling or more able to access different areas or puzzles and go around this world. And I'm gonna leave it to you, Jay. What do you think?
Yeah. In terms of the main mechanic, just so my mind could wrap around it, is it kind of like how you could combine powers in like Kirby?
Yeah, why not? Let's do that. But instead, it's also physical characteristics.
Yeah.
It's powers that will manifest in physical characteristics, or that kind of nails it on the head.
Abilities and stuff. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, in terms of gameplay, are you thinking this to be, because it could go multiple different ways, but are you thinking this mostly be like a storytelling puzzle like game, or is there going to be like action fighting to it?
I was thinking it would have action fighting too. I almost wanted the puzzles and the game to be Breath of the Wild like, where you're set off in this world and then there's storytelling happening, but you also meet people and go that route.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know if I want to call it people. I also want it to be based off its own world, so it'll have just these creatures and races that are all of its own, you know?
Yeah. We could maybe it could be like Dragon Ball Z, where there's like walking, talking animals, and there's like aliens, and there's like weird different creatures and stuff. But what I think would be a cool mechanic to this and how this game will work is you start the game off and you are, let's say, and I want this to be like a named protagonist with his own personality, his own way of being. Like, I want this to be a Nathan Drake, or I want this to be like Joel or Ellie, or someone that the player can't really change as a person, if that makes sense. And they will start off as like a regular person, but has like one random thing to him. Let's say he has like a rhino's horn. Maybe that's what these people are. They're like hybrids of animal people things. Anyway, he has like a rhino's horn. Okay. And his father's a rhino person and his mother's a human or whatever. And somewhere in the game, he gets the power to do exactly what you said, is like fuse with other things and animals and beings. And I kind of want it to be where the rhino horn is like a permanent thing. You have to mix things with the rhino power for the first chapter. And then after that, the rhino part of you, for story reasons, gets out of your body, and you could change that part of you. But in the next chapter, something happens to you where you're stuck as like a part dragon and you got wings or something. You know what I mean? So like each chapter, you're going to have one part of your body that's like not part of your body. The two halves of your taking on different elements.
So one will be static.
Yeah, and then the other one will be whatever you want.
I'm cool with that, but let's make it where the story is that way, and I hope you can hold on to your thoughts. Sorry for interrupting. Is that if that's the case where maybe one will always be static and then you'll be able to choose which one's static later, is having then later on two combinations where then you could fuse with two things. So then you could take on a second characteristic.
I also think later on, you're like maybe 2 or 3 chapters in, that static thing no longer applies. Like you got rid of whatever is making it so one part of you is always permanently something until a certain story point happens that's out the window. And then from there, you could just take over whatever you want and whenever. And that's probably at around the half point mark of the game. From then on, you just get whatever. And then, maybe after the half point mark, you do get the ability to fuse with 3 different things and then be able to do multiple different stuff.
And what I mean by this is it doesn't always have to be animals that you fuse with.
Mm-hmm,
so just to give some examples, so it seems a little bit more clear. So you could fuse with maybe a bear, and then you're this bear and you're able to take on this creature, and you do just well on the first boss. And like you said, it's static. So maybe you are the rhino or the bear or whatever in this one. And then eventually find out that you're not powerful enough just with that characteristic. So then you fuse with a tree to get bark armor. So then all of a sudden it's piecing off of you, like it's breaking off, but you're able to survive longer because you have armor. Another way in a puzzle-based thing would be, I'm thinking you could even fuse with inanimate objects. So all of a sudden you fuse with like a tree or like a plant, and you become much lighter. And then maybe a breeze can carry you off, and you can float and like use that to get to higher places.
Right. No, I definitely feel that. And maybe also the way that it can work. This is how it's going to work in my head. You press options or menu or whatever it is on your controller, the start button, what used to be the start button, and then it brings up your inventory screen, and it's gonna look kind of like a Skyrim inventory screen where it's outline of your main character's body, and then it's gonna have head, arm, hands, legs, and feet, right? But instead of interchanging weaponry and equipment, you're interchanging one of 2 different possibilities of what powers you have sucked in at that time. Not powers, but you know what I mean. And so you could choose to have on your head at the beginning of the game, the head is always permanently rhino, but then you could put rhino on any other part of your body as well. But then when you fuse with something else, you could add that to parts of their body that you want that to be a part of. Do you know what I mean? Like you fuse with the tree, you could put that on your chest, and then you get the bark chest armor. But then you put a tree as your legs, and that gives you like, I don't know, a planted buff where if you stand still, you do more damage or something.
And what I would like also is all of these characteristics, since it is an open world game, I want it to be a little physics based, in the sense that if you do have bark armor and you face an enemy that utilizes fire, you will turn on fire. Yeah. If you fuse with someone who's aquatic, you'll do better against fire, but maybe you'll walk slower on land. Same if you fuse with stone, you're going to be heavier. Stuff
I like
of that nature.
Yeah. Also, I think what would be cool is if you could have maybe your L1 and R1 buttons, or whatever it would be, associated to there's like a meter that fills up, and once you hit that meter, you could press a button and you could choose depending on what button it is, you could choose like if you have Rhino and Tree at the time, that ult, quote unquote, is you becoming fully a Rhino or becoming fully a Tree. You know what I mean? And it's your ult move, so it'll have like pretty good benefits of becoming a Rhino for 30 seconds or something, or becoming a Tree gives you like ultimate defense and maybe like healing properties for like 15 seconds or something like that. And it'll be like those ults will change depending on what parts you have, but each part will have an ult, and you could choose which one to activate when you get your ult after like a certain combo or how many kills or whatever.
Most definitely, most definitely. I like that. I like having an ult as a part of the move list as well. Now, I want there to be also tons of little secrets in this game, so that if you combine powers, players are going to find different villages and maybe different little quests and things to do. For instance, one I would like is at the bottom of the ocean floor, I'd like there to be an aquatic people. And you can do that by either fusing with aquatic animals or changing your feet to stone and then changing your head to gills and jumping into the water and just sinking to the bottom, or changing everything to rock so you can't breathe. And there's different ways to do it. Same thing with I think it'd be cool if there was like a cloud palace. That way it's just the world feels full of discoverable where you're like, okay, no, hold on. I can now do this and that, and I can tell I interact with the environment. Let me take it to the next level and see if I find anything. I'd want there to be something cool for everyone to see in every nook and cranny of this game.
And in terms of like the sky area, maybe that you get dragon wings or some kind of wings so you could fly, but you can't fly too high until you get a different thing to get you better aerodynamics or something like paper or something, so you could get cut through a certain atmospheric level. And I think you actually said something that was exactly how I thought this game would play, where if you want to get to the underground city, you have to have fish and like you said, rock, or and make your legs rock and your head fish so you could get down there. Or it could be anything like metal with, I don't know, snail or something like that. Yeah. Turtle with bubbles. I don't know, just whatever. And we'll have like, of course, it's not like you could fuse with everything and anything, but we'll have like an extensive list of stuff. Yeah. And like also make it so everything has their own unique skill sets, abilities attached to them, different fighting styles and stuff. So everything will be fully worked out. And I think we could have it so, like you said, there'll be secrets. So there's things that you have to do. Some stuff, there's multiple things to solve a certain thing or to get to a certain place. But for the super secret stuff, like maybe there's a village you could find that's super, super tiny, but you could only get there if you know exactly the combination that you need to get there. Like super hard to find things like that.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what I want. And on top of that, I think it would be cool for people to experiment with the combat. Like if you find a hedgehog sort of creature that kind of burrows up and then you fuse with like swords or maybe poison, you can then have a bunch of metallic quills, or you can have quills with poison on them. The combinations are kind of endless in that way, where you can choose how you want to fight and what your fighting style will be. Maybe you keep the wings and then you drop things off and hit people from the air.
Yeah. I think there would also be a fun thing in the game where it's like maybe a synergy stat, where there are certain combinations that you could do that will work together to make a more unique effect. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it'll give you a bonus effect because of synergy. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, or even a negative effect. Like, let's say you mix together fire and water, maybe that will make smoke, and so that'll be a way to like get a good escape plan is to absorb water, and then if you already had fire on, just to get away real quick.
That'd be really cool. And then to experiment where it has a debuff on it.
Yeah. Or like what I'm thinking, maybe It wouldn't even have to be two elements like
because you could do steam where you can get away or it can hurt people. And then if you fuse with maybe steel or wood, then you can change it into steam power, where maybe that makes it locomotion, or you can kind of direct it at people, or you can make smoke.
Yeah, definitely. And there is one element of the game that I want to do, but with the way that it's set up, I feel like it would be hard. Maybe there's a way you could work around it for me, but the way that I think about this game right now is these fusion things is like kind of like Witcher potions. There's something you have to think of beforehand. But I think it would be cool if you can absorb something quickly. But with the way that inventory works, where you're interchanging pieces of your body to certain things, how would it work if you're just absorbing something super quick?
It would be just general. It could probably be just so maybe the body parts will be like the last half of the game, and the first half would be quick absorb, where you're absorbing and it's just two coming together, where it's like whole and it comes up with a random thing where it's divided randomly, sort of. And what I mean by sort of is the game's going to be smart enough that if you absorb a bird, it's going to give you wings. If you absorb a rock, it's going to make you heavy. If you absorb bark and you're an animal, it's going to give you armor. At first, that's going to be the general thing. And then you can then later on focus those characteristics once maybe you're more familiar with how the game works.
Maybe also you could have like a bunch of button switches that you could turn on and off. I know for non-gamers, it could get kind of confusing, but if you play a lot of games, I think you could definitely utilize it where, like, let's say every time you absorb something, it'll be put into the compendium, right? Where there's like a huge list in games where you could see everything that you've already absorbed. And maybe from that list, you could go specific. And when you find a bird that you could fuse with, because for simplicity's sake, it would be a specific bird that you'd always have to go, or maybe multiple different types of birds that will give you different effects. I don't know how that would work out exactly, but you could click on that bird and then you could do, if I absorb this, and then it'll give that same inventory screen. You could pin where it will affect your body once you quick absorb. You quick absorb it and it'll automatically, you could set, I want this part, this part, this part in these places. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Another,
or maybe because and there's different ways you can do it, like a radial menu where it shows your body parts and you're just like boop 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 and then it's done.
Oh yeah
where it can just be something real fast where it's quick absorb and then it'll just pop it up and you can choose real fast and it's paused in the game and then go from there. That'd be fun for combat.
I like that idea,
because then you could quick absorb, change it, and then change it out again. So you could even do it if you're advanced. Change it so you have like bark hands, hit, then change it, or you could you could do it where you have bark hands and then maybe like fire feet or something, and then you can ignite it. I don't know.
No, I liked that idea a lot better than what we've been brainstorming so far. So this is how I think it could work. So forget everything we said about quick absorbing. This is, I think, how it's gonna work in the game. You are part rhino, part tree. You see a rock, you want that rock. You would run over to that rock and press and hold whatever the button is, and then it'll slow down time, whatever, and then the radial will come up. And then you'll pick what radial it is, and that's where the first part it's gonna get attached to. You know what I mean? So you click and hold, and then that's where you absorb that, and then it'll absorb it on just wherever on that radial you pick. And then if you want, you could press start, pause the whole game, go in and freaking change everything. But if you just want quick, easy quick fusing, you just radial that one arm and then use that, and then go from there. And then how the Kirby one power. You could only hold two, and maybe later in the story, three powers all at the same time, or three parts of the body. I guess it'll just be whatever's not permanent at first, and then later on, you have to choose which one is the primary and which one is the givey up. It would be
cool
one.
if the permanent one had special effects. For instance, if you chose a fire one and then made the rest of your body rock, and the fire was like the core, the primary characteristic, you'd have like magma coming out of you. Like you'd have like magma, like fire eyes, and like maybe when you talk, smoke comes out of your mouth, that kind of stuff.
So you want
it would be the prime characteristic.
Yeah,
like just a little bit more say on your visual looks.
Exactly. Like the way that you look will be based more on your primary element, that is the one that when you quick fuse will stay, and then when you do quick fuse, the one that you didn't choose is the one that completely goes away.
And now now that we got that down, I feel really good about where we're at. We'll say that the story is that you're the only person, like everyone exists in harmony and everyone utilizes everything, and maybe you're one person born every millennia who can actually inhabit anybody and do anything. And for that, you have to set off on this quest, visiting every village and taking every piece before maybe going to a temple and ascending with other people of your calling. And It's not like anybody who's alive, but it would just be dead people in tomes and stuff. And you're renowned differently.
I like that to be the start of the game, where the journey is you being found as this like DNA free person. You were born and you find out like in your teens, like let's say when he turns 18 on his birthday, he somehow finds out, or someone finds out through a story beat that you play, that, oh, you are this legendary person that's supposed to be alive right now. You have to go through this journey, and you go through this journey and you do all this stuff. But I think eventually what the story will go down to is there is an evil force, and he wants to get rid of all these half-breeds. And I think these half-breeds and like partial breeds are because these people like your main character existed throughout history, and that's the reason why there's like different people that, not people, but different species that are like mixed of other species, is because they're people like your main character that existed throughout time. And so there are ways that there can be rhino people and stuff like that, and that's why it's normal. Anyway, there's someone who wants to get rid of that and make everyone human, and then that's like the main bad guy is this guy who's trying to get rid of all of this, get rid of you specifically, so there's no more mixing of random things together. It's just one normal thing, and make it more like what it real life is.
I like it. So what is this game going to look like? To me, I already seeing it looking like Ni no Kuni or like a Miyazaki kind of inspired game. But what I mean by that is, I guess it doesn't have to have a certain type of art style, but it's going to be colorful. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to have mostly, I'm not going to say a dark overtone, but also not very happy either, just right there sitting in the middle. I do want there to be a lot of colors, a lot of brightness, but to accurately reflect every city or every village you go to. If you're like kind of going to an underground village where everyone in it's blind because they're in the dark, I think it should be like a dark place that's a little scary, but not really scary. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see it as a Breath of the Wild-like look, or a Genshin Impact-like look, where, yeah, like you said, it's just very colorful, looks very peaceful and serene, and just nice in general. But if you go to certain areas, yeah, it could look a little grim and dark.
All right. What type of music are you looking for here?
I think even if it does look kind of like Breath of the Wild and Genshin Impact, in my head, these cities and stuff, I guess it's the Dragon Ball Z influence I have in my head in terms of what it kind of looks like. But I see these as like he's going from city to city, like cities where there's like, they look like downtown metropolitan areas, but surrounding areas look like basic not medieval, but fantasy game like
almost
areas.
The way a city would if that race took it and ran with a city structure. So it would be an evolution based off of how they live.
Yeah. I guess it is kind of more like Ni no Kuni's art style, if I think about it, where it's like you run into, like in Ni no Kuni 2, you start off in like this cat rat city, and it has a lot of cat looking stuff, it has a lot of rat looking stuff, but then as soon as you walk out of this huge industrial like city, it's just, there's nothing. You know what I mean? Like it's just nothing out there. And I think that's what it's kind of gonna look like here, where there's gonna be huge cities, and you walk out, it's gonna be a lot of hills, mountains, very naturey, and then you run into another big city, and then maybe a smaller village, and then maybe a really tiny little town and stuff like that.
And nomads in between, and random events, and weather, and all that. Yeah.
That all being said, for the music, I imagine it to be kind of contemporary. Like I imagine it just to be its own unique soundtrack of a collection of songs in all sorts of genres, kind of like how Persona does it, or like even a game like Xenoblade, where it's like sometimes it sounds fantastical, sometimes it sounds a little hip hop, sometimes it sounds a little electronica, depending on where you are.
I like that though. And yeah, depending on where you are. So like when you enter the tiny city, it would be funny if it was like almost like tiny sounding music. So when you know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but the idea of tiny sounding music is just funny.
Like maybe it's like sped up, but also like there's an effect on it. Is all I can say. Maybe like a bunch of different like string instruments. That's because you can make big sounding music. For instance, if you enter like the land of giants, let's say you fuse and you become a giant too, and that's the only way they'll notice you or talk to you, otherwise they'll step on you. Like that music, if you're a big giant, you know there's tubas, there's horns, like it's like boom, boom, boom. I imagine, so I'm not crazy here to defend this line of thinking, that there'd be a little city where it'd be like beep, boop, boop, boop. Does that make any sense at all?
I guess so. Yeah. Like you want it to be like maybe like a piccolo, like a tiny little flute.
There we go. Yeah, something like that.
I see like that little, not a mouth harp, but it's like a harpsichord, but it's like made out of little sticky like metal pieces, and you just flick these tiny little metal things.
And let's say you find a city where it's like on a like you find an island. And there's an island race. That's where you're gonna get fucking ukulele, and that's what I'm thinking here. All right, pricing. This could go a number of different ways because its inspirations have gone a number of different ways.
Yeah. In my head, it's either full price or free to play, and we follow a Genshin Impact model, or we go full price, finish the game, and go Breath of the Wild model.
And that's what I was thinking as well. I want to go Breath of the Wild model, but if we are to be successful, I think free to play might be the way.
I think it would serve best to be a Breath of the Wild model where we focus heavy on making sure every single fusible object is amazing, balanced, unique, and feel different. And then introduce small story arcs that are based in new lands and areas, maybe like the secret places you could get to, but there's not a bunch you could do there until we add new DLCs. Like we add the Water City DLC where you go underwater, and sure, you could be a fish, you could do all this stuff, but when we add that, you could become a whole load of different stuff, and elements that are underwater. You know, I don't know if that makes any sense, but like we'll expand the underwater fusible animals and things you could turn into. Like octopi maybe wasn't in the original, but then we'll add it to the underwater. And then there's like the Cloud City DLC that you add, and then there you could add a lot of different different characters and stuff.
Flying and floating and hot balloon, different mechanical things as well. No, yeah, I dig it. We'll go full priced here.
Yeah, and then add DLC that introduced a new area with also new elements and fusible animals and materials.
Sweet. All right, Jay. Let's get your timer out because we're going to name this game.
I forgot how to use my iPhone. Go.
It Takes Two.
That's it. All right, that's a wrap.
It's actually really good though, isn't it? Like, wouldn't it work? So Fusion. Oh, how about Come Together? Oh, but that could easily be played on the internet and made a meme of. For the sickos.
I kind of want to name it something similar to like a Patient Zero vibe, or like Master Key Code, or like Skull Key type of Skeleton Key type of thing, where it's like these rare individuals. I don't want it to be every million years. I want it to be like every 100 years. I want them to be rare but abundant enough where they could kind of chase or change how the evolution of this universe we create works, where like all of a sudden you could have partial beings because of these people that exist throughout time. And so I kind of want it to be like I don't know, non-evolution or something like that, like de-evolution, or like,
yeah. But then like gene break, something like that, where it's like you're breaking the genes and putting them back together.
And your character's name is Gene.
I'll concede that to you. Yes, if that's a sure.
Gene break in 1 minute and 53-ish seconds.
All right. Gene Break is a game in which you are now a character who's one in maybe a whole time, maybe a whole era, and is able to break their genes and fuse with other people, fuse with other animals, fuse with other things to go about the world and adapt. You can visit other cities, complete quests, battle, make a name for yourself, be known, visit every village, and more in Gene Break. Well, Jay, I think we have a game here. Would this be a game you'd want to play, and is it fun?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a good, fun time that is arguably another Breath of the Wild like, but expanding on the elemental physics side of it, where you would want to experiment with a bunch of different combinations of stuff. And that was my favorite part of Kirby anyway. I don't like Kirby games, but sucking up two different things and seeing how those two powers combine and do something new was always the appeal of Kirby games to me. And
me as well.
That was the most fun part of those games. So I think I would give it a shot. What about you, Alex?
Same here. You took the words right out of my mouth. Fusing things is the most fun in a way where you want to see what you're going to get. It's almost like a gotcha mechanic, but it's something beneficial and you're learning as well. So it makes you want, when you get fire, like, well, what will fire in this do? What will fire in that do? I want to try it on everything to see what I like best. And also kind of gives you a unique way to play so you have a story to tell your friends.
Yeah.
So a definite yes for me. And now that we have a complete game, what game studio would you assign to be able to make Gene Break the best?
I hope this is a studio that you are also thinking of if you've been thinking of one, because the first studio I thought of that I want to give this to is Proletariat. I don't know if I said that right. Proletariat Inc. Proletariat Inc.
I don't know.
They are behind a game called Spellbreak. And if you remember Spellbreak, it was all about getting two different elemental gauntlets and using those gauntlets to mix together their effects to get the advantage in battle. And I think this game is essentially that. And also, you do have a primary gauntlet and the gauntlet that you switch out throughout gameplay. And that's also an idea that we were toying around with. And honestly, I kind of got that idea from Spellbreak because I think that would be great for this type of game. Also has a similar art style.
Another developer, which I think we took inspiration from, is Young Horses. They're the developers behind Bugsnax, and I think they could do the same thing where we kind of took their idea of eating snacks and then attributing them to a certain limb. We could then do in an open world RPG instead of a kind of don't know what to call Bugsnax except for like a collectathon story puzzle game. I think it'd be pretty good.
And like it'll be a good like second game to jump off of after Bugs. That being said, I don't know if that is their first game or not, Bugsnax, but
it would be great to jump off of after the success that was Bugsnax.
Next for me would be Sucker Punch with their experience with Infamous. I think they know how powers work. Now they just have to know how powers can work together with other powers in terms of combining and being more physics based. But they could definitely get the open world going. They could definitely do like a story, like put a good story in there. And they even have some choose your own dialect options that have minor consequences in their games as well. They would just have to get a, different art style and stuff like that for sure. But they could definitely do something cool.
Most def. And then my latest one would be Game Freak. I think coming up with different physics and different puzzles going around what powers can do, they could do as well. It would be a big step up for them. But I was hoping that they would then take maybe not the Pokemon stuff all the way through, but I feel like they could develop a world and make a world that's really lush with different animals and different creatures.
Yeah. I mean, we'd have to see how Arceus or whatever that game's called turns out. But I like Game Freak as an idea. I just feel like their experience with bigger scope games like this hasn't been a proving ground for them yet. But who knows? Maybe this is the game.
And with that, our 148th IP has gone gold. We hope you look forward to this experience that will probably never release. You can write to @poundgames@gmail.com if you have anything to patch into the game we create today. Also, give us feedback. We are still learning how to make this show better, and your feedback really helps. We have a Patreon. If you'd like to track back our ideas, please head over to patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. Patrons receive episodes 2 days early and an extra podcast at the beginning, which you caught the tail end of our conversation at the beginning of this episode. That's patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. If you liked our show, why not subscribe and give us all the stars on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, YouTube, and more. And if they ask for a review instead of reviewing our show, become your inner game critic and review Gene Break, the video game we just created. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next Friday with another new IP. Again, my name is AG, and that's
JE.
Thank you, and please remember that we are not game devs. Some of my other inspirations for this game, there was Kirby, there was Bugsnax, Steven Universe, and a little bit of Zoids. So there you go. I don't know if I'll name my inspirations to my games at the end of every show, but I feel like it's kind of cool to reveal them, and then people will be like, oh yeah, okay, I see where he was coming from.
I mean, it's the opposite of what I do, where I talk about my inspirations at the start of the show. So we'll have that for our own purposes.
Do you see where I'm coming from with all those?
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, not Steven Universe though, because I don't know anything about that.
Oh, you don't know anything about it?
Don't know nothing.